Everybody, we're going to get started again. So everybody take their seats, please. And why don't you come back up here? Thank you. And you have your mask and all that? Okay.
Can I put this exhibit up on an easel now?
Yes, I see we have, that's better.
Yeah.
Okay, let's stand for the jury and we'll bring the jury back out, please. Okay, have a seat, everyone. Thank you. And ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I trust your morning break went well. And we'll break again sometime around noon for about an hour, and then we'll have a lunch break. Thank you. Ms. Lemko, go ahead.
Thank you, Honor. Now, Ms. Bilgo, we finished. You had just indicated that you were speaking with Mr. Prokopovitz about the last time he saw Victoria and what she was doing. You indicated that he said that he last saw her at 10 o'clock. She's watching TV. Did he indicate what he did?
He said that he went to sleep because he had to work the next day.
Okay. And then did he indicate that he had gone in the bedroom?
I don't recall where he went.
Okay. At some point then, did he indicate that he woke up?
For work and looked in on her and said that she wasn't in her bed.
Do you recall if he said he looked over and saw she's not in bed, or you just kind of don't recall?
No, my recollection is they didn't sleep in the same room because of the way he said they looked in on her and that she wasn't in bed.
But if there was only one bedroom, then that is probably where he slept? You don't recall?
I don't recall.
Okay. Okay. So when you memorialize what you do in cases, do you prepare a police report? And in that to memorialize things so that if you ever get called to testify in a case, you may recall what occurred?
Yes.
Is it also utilized in the course of investigations then?
Yes.
Would looking at your details and the verbiage used assist you? This happened a while ago?
Oh, yes. Yeah, this happened a decade ago.
I've been marked as exhibit number 26. What is this?
It is my
Do you have the opportunity to briefly review that before testifying here today?
I did.
Okay. Now, specifically with regard to your report, when you're indicating what Mr. Prokopovitz indicated had occurred on that date, and now I'm looking specifically in paragraph He indicated that when he went to bed last night, after that, would that indicate he had gone into another room and not been sitting in that same?
It was a small house, and now that I asked when he had last seen her, and he had said when he had went to bed, she was watching, and that when he woke, she was not in bed.
Okay. At that time that he is talking to you about that, did he indicate that initially that wouldn't have been uncommon based on their sleeping habits?
He did. So, and I thought that was odd because, you know, she's up later, he goes to bed because he has to get up early, but then he said that she often got up before him yet and would go for walks outside.
When he referred to the fact that she'd go for walks, do you recall if he indicated she recently would or that, or don't you know?
I just remember him saying that, because I was kind of, when he said that he woke up and she wasn't there, and I was like, oh, my goodness, you know, that kind of seemed, and he said, no, that was common, that she would often get up at, when it's still dark and go for walks.
Okay,
And I thought that was just a bit odd also.
but that's what he said.
That is what he said.
So at the time that you're speaking with him, do you also, in particular in today's day and age, ask him about whether she had internet access?
Yes, because she was just,
About her pattern? Somebody that was frequently in her house?
as far as like her.
His description of her.
He told me that she had had a colostomy bag for a significant amount of time, and that because of that, it produced a significant amount of anxiety for her, just having to have that under her clothes. Didn't socialize much.
That she wasn't leaving the house much.
Correct.
At the time when you're talking to him, did he indicate if she had any internet access?
Yeah, I specifically asked about internet just in case she was talking to somebody or got a ride a different way, because he had given information that her at the house. I was just trying to contact someone.
When you're talking about this phone, did he actually show you the? Did he indicate what else she had left behind?
So she took a peek in it to see what all was in it. And there was actually, you know, her money was still in it, her driver's license, IDs are still in it, her makeup, things were still in there. So to me, that indicated that a member or friend or something, or just to go for a drive or something, you're going to take your purse, your personal identification, phone, and your money. But all these things were still there.
Now, with respect to these. Mm-hmm. showing you it's marked as State's Exhibit number 27. What is this?
A small woman's handbag.
Does this appear consistent with the purse you saw on that day?
Yes.
Okay. I'm also showing you Exhibit number 28. What is this?
Flip phone.
Okay. And based upon your knowledge of flip phones back then, would that have been something that had access to an internet? Or don't you know?
That one, 10 years ago, probably not. I don't.
When the defendant told you, Mr. Prokopovitz told you?
He said that she did not have internet access.
Okay. Now, at the time that you're there, when you're talking about that purse, was the purse opened?
I definitely opened it and took a look through it, looking
Okay.
for anything that would indicate maybe where she was, an appointment card.
So I'm showing you, so the record reflects, Your Honor, I have opened Exhibit number 27. As I'm opening this up to you, does this appear to be consistent with all the personal items that you would have seen on that date?
Yes.
Does it appear to be pretty full?
Yes.
So this isn't an item that it seems most of the belongings are missing. There's things in it.
Yes.
Okay. And consistent with that, do they appear to be personal?
Yes. Hairbrush, comb, makeup.
A lot of it makeup? Is there perfume in
Yeah,
there?
it looks like makeup and she's even got a sandwich baggie of other. Kind of like waited for me to ask my next question, or like he just kind of stood there waiting for me to tell him what was going to happen or what I was going to do.
And when you arrive on the scene, you're already receiving some information about the comments he's making when he would have called dispatch. Is that right?
Yes. So when, yes,
I was going to say, is that something that gets put in what's deemed a CAD report?
yes.
What is a CAD report?
It's the initial computer notes that our dispatch center gets. So someone in the dispatch center answers the phone, and they ask you who you are, what's going on, and where you are, phone number, personal information. They put it in, and they'll put in statements that the caller gives them. So our CAD notes would give us our first, as an officer, give us our first look at what someone is calling in for assistance with.
And that's what I was going to ask. So that when you're coming out as a law enforcement officer, the CAD notes are what you rely on having some preliminary information about what's happened.
Yes, ma'am.
Been marked as State's exhibit number 24. What is this?
It is a printout from the Brown County Sheriff's Department CAD computer, and it's basically just they timeline each item as they enter it into the computer.
Now, with respect to that, is the title on that also incident recall?
Yes,
So that's something that's memorialized about an incident?
yes.
Specifically, I would ask, in relation to this incident, if starting with Victoria Prokopovitz, down to the end of that paragraph, if you could just read into the microphone for the jury what was said.
So this was what I mentioned before when I got the call, and they give us so much verbalization of the call over the radio, and then we look in the computers. So this is what I would have read. It says, Victoria L. Prokopovitz, 9/10/53, female white, 60 years of age, has been missing all morning. Complainant husband woke up for work early, a.m. but then has been looking around after an hour or two. So he went in search of her and cannot find her, called his son, and they have been out looking and cannot find her. Her purse, phone, and items she would normally have are home. She suffers from depression and was to see her doctor yesterday with husband at Bellin and seemed to go well, changed her meds, ? But call her husband was with, and she seems fine.
So with respect to that, at the initial call that you're responding to, the caller has said, who's identified as Mr. Prokopovitz, that the appointment, that she seemed well. Is that right?
Yeah,
on that day?
Yep, this is information that dispatch is putting in, and they would have got that from him as the complainant, and that, yes, he said he told the dispatchers that she seemed fine.
He said the appointment, she seemed well, and that she seemed fine.
Yes.
Both things.
Yeah, more than once he told dispatch that it was.
So at the time that you were speaking to Mr. Prokopovitz, you found out that it has been indicated that he and his son have been out looking. Is that right?
That's what dispatch had relayed to me.
That's what he said, right? Well, that's what dispatch said, he said.
Yes.
Okay. So when you're speaking with him now, you indicated that you were making an inquiry about access to medications, to weapons. As you're on the scene, you've been indicated that there's nothing with respect to that going on. Is that right?
Correct.
When he's indicating that he woke up now and
That she wasn't in bed.
yeah. So then he indicated, did he indicate then what he did?
He told me that he was worried and actually drove around in his work truck looking for her for a while before he went to work.
Okay. And then did he indicate where he worked?
He did. It was Georgia Pacific. He worked for McKeefrey, and they were contracted through Georgia Pacific.
Okay. Now, when you're speaking to him, do you make an inquiry as to what Victoria was last wearing when he last saw her?
Yes.
And what did he say?
So, again, with a missing person, let's say it's even a teen, or like, what are they last wearing? First of all, we're wondering if it's appropriate for the weather. Are they out in, shorts and it's 30 degrees out? So I asked him if he had any idea what she might be wearing, and he didn't really have any suggestions. And I said, well, you said that she normally walks. So does she walk, like have a certain pair of shoes that she goes for walks in? And I don't recall if I suggested it or if he said that she possibly had some white tennis shoes. All the things in the home that I could see from standing in the kitchen, the little small dinette area, it seemed that everything had a place. So there were a lot of like knickknacks and keepsakes and things everywhere, but everything was placed. I asked if she kept her shoe wear somewhere, or her whatever shoes or boots she had, and I kind of walked a little bit in the dining entryway where you come into the house, and I moved enough that I could kind of see into what appeared to be a bedroom. And there didn't seem to be a lot of space around it. And Mr. Prokopovitz said, oh, she doesn't keep her shoes in there, indicating the bedroom. And I'm like, well, where does she keep them? You know, maybe it'll be obvious to you if we look. So then he indicated behind where I was, south of where I was, there's a really narrow hall, and there was a very shallow closet. So we look into the closet, and very neatly are shoes and taller boots in like a second or third row. And all the front row was full, but a back row item was missing. And I'm like, well, are these her shoes? He's like, yes, those are all her tennies. And I'm like, well, what seems to be missing? He's like, well, there's a boot missing. I'm like, okay, what kind of boot? And he said it was a dressy, high, stacked heel boot. And I'm like, how high? This high, this high. So he indicates, you know, really high, stacked heel boot. I'm like, okay. And I'm thinking to myself, when he's indicating that this is what she's wearing to go, you know, middle of the night, dark 30, 4 o'clock in the morning, go for a walk, I thought, this is hinky, because being a woman, I'm not going to want to walk around outside in a stacked heel boot.
Well, let me ask you that. When Mr. Prokopovitz had indicated to you
Asked him what she normally would wear. I don't recall if he had said that she normally would wear the tie, or if I had offered that up as.
So at the time that you were talking to him as a law enforcement officer, is it important for you to evaluate the plausibility of the information you're getting?
Absolutely.
Okay. And with respect to that information, that caused you to pause?
It did.
Okay. Now, besides indicating that she had been wearing a particular shoe, did he also indicate to you anything relative, just what he said about what clothing he was last seen in by him?
So after the boot indication, it was very clear that something was missing from the back like that. I was kind of more interested in like, okay, what was she last wearing? And he didn't seem to want to postulate to what, so I said, well, is there a certain place she keeps her coats? How many coats can she have? I said, let's go look in where you keep your coats. So in the little bit of an entry, we backtracked through the little dining area. There was like a hall upper coat area. And so he opened that up, and I'm like, okay, here's her coats. What's missing? And he said that her white coat was missing.
Okay. So essentially, the description you had at that point then is that when you made an inquiry of him, if her purse was missing and he told you no, it wasn't, and showed you that?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, as you are talking to him about the items that were still left behind, isn't it true that her driver's license had been left behind?
Yes.
But you already have information she didn't really have access to have left in a car anyway. Is that right?
Correct.
When you're talking about this house, you made a reference in your testimony about it being small. Is that right?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
When you're describing that, if you were to learn that the defendant, or that there were statements about everybody being able to hear what was going on in the house, would that surprise you?
No.
Okay. And when you, just so the jury understands, I know the pictures we're going to publish will show it. Was this like a 2-story house?
Yes,
Recall, and was there a basement?
there was.
Okay. Besides the driver's license, was her social security card also left behind? If you recall.
I don't recall.
Okay.
I believe if I had looked through her purse, I would have looked completely through it. And earlier when you held the purse up, you opened the larger compartment on it. I believe if you open one of the side compartments, because I didn't notice the driver's license in the middle, it's possibly in one of the side compartments and some other ID.
Okay, so I'm, again, just for the record, showing you Exhibit 27. I'll touch it. You don't have to open this.
So now in this smaller side pocket, because I can, is there money in there? Because I remember noting that there was like $10 or something in her wallet.
You don't have to touch it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. As I'm taking, is this the side pocket here then of 27?
Yes, it's
Okay, and what would this first item be out of the side pocket?
a Wisconsin driver's license issued to Victoria Prokopovitz.
Okay. What would that be?
It looks like a health card. And a social security card for Victoria Lynn Prokopovitz. A laminated picture of Jesus.
Okay, would this be what some call a prayer card?
And you turn it over and it says, yes, there's a don't quit prayer message on the
Can
back.
you say that into the microphone? What's the title of that?
The prayer card she keeps with her license, it says don't quit. Medicare piece of paper in her wallet to Victoria for just,
The beneficiary's her?
yes,
Okay. But again, another item of medical benefits or care, Medicare?
yes, that I would assume that a person would keep in their personal.
Piece of paper?
Yep.
What is that?
A little piece of paper from in her wallet that says PIN number 1006.
actually, in law enforcement, when there is money located in an item, is that usually put in a separate spot for currency?
Are you asking me if
Does that
people,
money actually-
people keep money in different
One
spots?
at a time. One at a time, please.
Sorry.
Thank you.
No, once a piece of evidence goes to law enforcement that is money, that gets separated and put in a different account because it's money?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I meant, sorry. So actually, in this case, at the time that you see the purse, but it's not actually taken into custody.
No.
Okay, so when you saw the purse, there was a $10 bill in it?
Yes.
So you actually don't know what happened with the money that was in there?
No.
Okay. Now, at the time that you were speaking with Mr. Prokopovitz, at some point, do you make an inquiry about whether or not other family members have seen Victoria?
I asked specifically, as her cell phone was laying on the table with the purse, I asked if she had been in contact with any friends or family, and Mr. Prokopovitz had said no. When he had told me that that was her cell phone on the table, I remember asking him if I can't remember if I was worried it would have a pin or something, but I think I just opened up the phone and looked to see if she had any exiting calls or any incoming calls that she would have had either on the 26th or the night before, indicating where she could be.
And as a result of that, and I'd ask, I think, do you have your details up there still?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm looking now on the bottom of page one of your details. Would looking at that refresh your recollection quickly about what you did with the phone?
Yes. When I did open the phone and check it, it showed no calls in or out since the 20th, and this was the 26th.
So the 20th would have been 6 days earlier.
Yes.
And you noted that? No calls in or out?
Yes. I thought it was odd, especially because Mr. Prokopovitz said that he had looked for her that morning before he went to work, indicating that he must be somewhat worried about her, but that he didn't call her. No one called her, like, during the day to check on her, and that he didn't try calling her after work to speak to her.
So at the time also then, when you're quickly checking that history, you noted most of the calls were to or from Jim's cell?
I did. So in looking at it, most of the calls were just back and forth between her and Jim prior, 5-6 days prior to the day that I was there. But I did notice one call from a Stacy in the history. And I asked who that would have been, and Mr. Prokopovitz told me that it was Victoria's daughter. And I had asked if he had checked with Stacy, and he said that he had not. And I thought I recalled, at that time, I recalled him telling dispatch that he had checked with people to see where if she could be with a family member. So I thought that that was odd. So what I did was I made a conscious choice to call Stacy from Mrs. Prokopovitz's phone, not from my work phone, but from her phone. Many times people will answer the phone if they recognize the number. So I called her and spoke with Stacy.
And at the time, did she identify herself and give you her full name?
Yes.
What was that?
Stacy Deer.
Okay. At the time that you are calling Stacy, you now know you're calling her, and Jim's already told you that he hadn't told her about her mom?
Correct.
So when you call Stacy, do you make an inquiry about when she last spoke to her mom?
I did. Stacy told me that she hadn't spoken to her mother for a week, but she did indicate that their phones had been off. When she said off, I assumed not connected, not paid for. So she hadn't been able to contact her because of that. And then she said they had recently been turned back on. I told her that, obviously I was a deputy with the sheriff's department and that I was at her mother's residence because Mr. Prokopovitz had called the sheriff's department worried that Victoria had not been heard from since possibly the night before. And Stacy told me that she was concerned.
And did she tell you why she was concerned?
Stacy indicated that her mom had tried to harm herself to commit suicide several years prior by taking an overdose, and that Victoria had made a comment to Stacy if she ever did try to kill herself again, that she knew of a place where nobody would find her body.
So at the time that you're hearing that, that's just a fact initially in the case with regard to concerns about the mental health about Victoria and the possibility of suicide. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
So as a law enforcement officer, you're attempting to collect all the evidence involved in cases. Is that right?
Absolutely.
And at the time that you're investigating this as a missing person, you are acknowledging that you're dealing with someone who's had a history of depression and suicide. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
So as a result of that, and in speaking to Jim, did you learn that there was another occupant of the house that he was living in with Victoria?
Yes. Jim told me that Victoria's son, Wes Edges, lived with them. And I asked where he was. I asked where he was for a couple of reasons. I don't want to be in a house where there's people and I can't see them. I don't know them or their intentions. But I had been there for a little while talking to Jim, and I hadn't heard anything or anyone. And when I went to the house and dispatch had given me those initial CAD notes where it said that he and his son, Wes, had been looking for her, when I arrived and went into the home, I assumed that I would be finding numerous family members there who were frantic, concerned, looking for this 60-year-old woman. And when I got there and there was only Jim and he was really calm, it seemed odd. So when he said that Wes was actually upstairs, it made me think, well, why would he not be downstairs talking to the police officer that's in their house?
And so as a result of hearing about Wes, did Wes then come down and talk to you as well?
I think I asked Jim to get him or something from upstairs, and he got him, and Wes did come downstairs and talk to me.
Okay. And at that time, did Wes tell you he was very worried about his mother?
Actually, the opposite. Wes told me that he had seen his mom the night before at around 6 p.m., but he thought his mom seemed fine.
Okay, but I'm talking about when Wes came downstairs, now with her being missing. Did he indicate he was worried about her being missing?
I don't know if I put anything, I don't recall Wes.
I'm looking at your details in the third paragraph. Would that refresh your
Yes.
recollection?
Yes, that when Wes came downstairs, he told me that he was worried about his mother.
And so what you're testifying to is you made an inquiry of how she was the last time he saw her?
Yes,
Okay. And does Wes tell you the last time he saw his mom?
yes, he said that the last time he had seen her was the night before, around 6 p.m. And I asked, well, was she acting depressed or odd? And he said no, that she was in a good mood, and he specifically said she did not seem depressed.
Okay. So with respect to the information you got about prior suicide attempt or a statement Vicky made, you were never given a context of when that happened. Is that right? You don't know when she said it? When she made that reference to Stacy?
No, I don't know.
So if it was 10 years earlier, you didn't know that on that date?
No,
Okay. You've just heard that phrase.
yes,
But all the information you're receiving on that date from Mr. Prokopovitz and Wes is that Victoria, when last seen, was in a good mood and not depressed.
yes.
Okay. At the time that you're there then meeting with him, and now I'm talking about Jim again and Wes, do you have the opportunity to look at the rest of the house?
Yes. I asked Jim to walk me through the whole of the downstairs, kind of describe things and look with me, looking for anything that would be out of place, whether something was missing or broken or anything. He actually took me downstairs to the basement. The basement was decorated very detailed in a Christmas theme. It had Christmas trees up, all Christmas decorations. And then it was basically one big kind of room in there, but it was a small basement. And off to one side, it was actually like a fieldstone stacked, dry stacked basement on the one side. So it was a little creepy.
So at the time that you're down there, nothing is pointed out that's broken or disheveled?
No, and the way Wes had stayed upstairs and not come down to talk to me, I thought maybe Wes didn't want to be down by me. Maybe he didn't want to, because sometimes people don't want to see the police officers. They have other issues in their lives and they don't feel comfortable around us. And I remember when I was looking through the house, because I was getting an uneasy feeling from both men, that as police officers, we're always looking for things out of place or, blood spatter, things we're always looking for, some horrible things are waiting for horrible things to happen. It is what we're trained to do.
And at that time, you didn't note any?
No.
Okay. So besides that, and you had never met Wes or Jim prior this date?
No, not that I...
So you didn't really know their history or their background?
No.
Okay. So now, at the time, when you're meeting with Jim, however, he did indicate that Victoria had recently had a surgery that caused her to have a colostomy bag. Is that right?
When I was asking about her state of mind and the medication, I believe he told me then that because she had had a colostomy bag for some time, that led to her developing her extreme isolation because she didn't feel comfortable going out and about with it. But I believe he had said that she had a reversal surgery to remove the bag more recently.
Okay. But he did concede she had had some anxiety over the months with that colostomy bag?
Yes,
Okay. As a result then of meeting with him, you already referred to the fact it's typical that you'd fill out a missing person report, is that right?
yes.
Okay. I'm showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 25. Do you recognize that?
Yes, it's a Brown County Sheriff's Office missing persons certification. It's got the 13-18599 incident for this case, and it looks like my handwriting that I filled it out and had James M. Prokopovitz sign it.
Okay, and your name or your signature is on that document,
Yes,
as is Mr. Prokopovitz's?
yes,
And the name of the missing person's Victoria Prokopovitz?
yes, ma'am.
And just so it's clear for the jury, this Exhibit 25, this actually is literally a form that gets filled out for a missing person?
Yes,
Okay. And again, that's because this is actually more standard than typical? This is more common than people may know. That's why you have a form to just fill out when someone's missing?
yes,
Okay. And I guess what I mean by that, when you're an officer responding on an allegation of a missing person, this isn't something that officers just go in and start for a missing person, executing search warrants and doing all of this with evidentiary value, because sometimes people are recovered, correct?
majority of time people are recovered.
And when they are recovered, it's typically in short time.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And again, then you're following the standard protocol that you would have done on that date.
Yes,
So as far as you not collecting a purse or not doing some other different things on that date, starting an investigation to look for Victoria.
correct.
The time are, however, at the time you are there, you do call in for some assistance. Is that right?
I did. I believe that I called at least two people on my way out to the call, knowing the area, knowing how big it would be. One being a canine officer and the other being my shift sergeant, letting him know, like, it was towards the end of my workday, and knowing the area was so big, I was hoping I could get at least another person out there to help look around the property in case she had walked out by one of the many barns and fallen down, or maybe gone out in one of the barns and hung herself.
And with respect to that and your agency, because it is getting towards the end of your shift, are you also calling someone in to back up to cover your shift should it go on? Because overtime can be an issue and sometimes it's not granted.
Yes,
Okay, so you're calling a backup person and you're saying that's Deputy or it would be Sergeant Rick Kurth on that date?
yes, on that day, he was the shift supervisor for the section I was working, and he was actually going to work overtime for in coming up afternoon shift.
And then you've also indicated that you had called Officer Merle Cornelius as an assist from Oneida on the K-9?
Yes,
With regard to both of these gentlemen being contacted by you, did they then arrive at the residence?
yes,
And you're still there when they're arriving?
I
You remember?
I believe they might have arrived even before I walked in to speak to Mr. Prokopovitz. I don't remember if they were both there or if just one of them was there.
You just know at some point all three of you are there, no?
Yes,
All right.
but The other two officers utilizing the canine. When you utilize the canine for a search, you have one officer with the dog, and then you have a second officer always who is with them, because the officer with the dog is looking at the dog. So he's not looking at his surroundings, he's not looking for bad people with guns, or he may miss something. So we always have a second officer that walks with him.
So at the time that the officers arrive, do they search a different area of the residence than you do, or the outlying areas?
I had directed them to search the outbuildings in the field, and then possibly the wood line for her.
When you arrive, you made mention of something, is there this burn barrel that's there at the residence?
Yes, I recall, like, I drove in the driveway, and when we park, we don't drive up to someone's house and park right up to the house or right up to their garage. We park off tactically, because we never know what we're coming to. So I had parked to the northeast of the residence, and there had been, I think there's more than one burn barrel on the property, but there had been a burn barrel by the front of the house, and then maybe another, I believe another burn barrel behind the house. And I believe that the front burn barrel was actually smoking or burning when I arrived.
You know if that second burn barrel in back may have been like a dumpster, or do you think it was a second burn barrel?
No, I don't know what was in it. I didn't go out back or look at anything back there. I just know there was another barrel for sure back there.
Do you also remember when you were at the residence, do you remember seeing Mr. Prokopovitz's truck? Was that pointed out to you on that date?
I believe so when we drive into a driveway, we don't want to be surprised by anyone that's there. So it's not indicated in my call notes, but I'm sure I ran the plate of the vehicle, and it would not have come back to Mr. Prokopovitz because it's not, he told me it was owned by the company he worked for. But yes, there was a blue pickup, I believe.
And you wouldn't recall the condition it was in at that time?
Other than looking at some of those pictures that you had of, that the officers took after, I don't recall the vehicle at all.
You can just testify to what you personally know.
Yes.
Okay. And so at the time when Sergeant Kurth and Officer Cornelius arrive, are they responsible for searching the outbuildings and the adjacent property?
Yes.
Okay.
I remember pointing out to them that I saw that big pile of gravel and some disturbed ground, and that there was just a lot out there.
And essentially then that is what you were involved in with the search for that day? Or the call? At some point, do you leave and Sergeant Kurth completes the report on this incident?
Yes, well, I did. So after speaking to Mr. Prokopovitz, when I had Wes come downstairs, I asked Wes to take me through the upstairs because from talking to the gentleman, it seemed like that was Wes's area. So Wes had walked me through the upstairs also. So I'd walk through the entire residence, making sure that Mrs. Prokopovitz wasn't in any of the rooms in the home. Then I did go out and speak with the other officer, or actually, I believe they might have come in the house by me because it was past time for my shift to be done. I'd been there for an hour and a half or more. And I believe Sergeant Kurth suggested that I actually drive up to the Mountain Bay Trail before I leave to just look out there in case Mrs. Prokopovitz had been out there. So I actually asked Mr. Prokopovitz to go, if he wanted to go with me and point out, where he might have been looking or any place he thought she might have walked where we would possibly be able to look for her.
And do you remember that time of year? No, we're talking about April 26th of 2013. Do you remember what the ground was like at that time?
As far as
You didn't
frozen
notice
or,
any footprints anywhere consistent with somebody having left the property?
no, right around the driveway and everything, it was all gravel. It wasn't something that I didn't notice any,
Nothing unusual or evidence of somebody having done anything like that?
no.
So at the time that you're there, there was an issue relating to the condition of the bed.
Yes.
The time you recall. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do.
You did have information from Mr. Prokopovitz that he had been in that bed, isn't that right? On that night?
Yes. So Mr. Prokopovitz had told me that at 10 p.m. previously, he had seen his wife in the living room watching TV, and that he had gone to bed. And it's a small house. There's a little living room, teeny tiny hallway, small bedroom, that small dining room, and then a kitchen. And when I had initially been talking to him in that small dining area, and I had backed up and noticed that that was the bedroom, I want to take in everything, but I don't want to be creepy about it. I don't want to be like looking in people's bedrooms. But so I had backed up and looked, and I saw that the bed was made. And in keeping with the theme of the house, the bed was made very neatly and very ornately. Lots of ruffly pillows and dolls, like porcelain face dolls, like laid out specifically in a bedscape on the made bed. I remember looking at it all and thinking that it was odd because Mr. Prokopovitz got up at 4 a.m. and he said that Mrs. Prokopovitz wasn't in bed. So in my mind, Mrs. Prokopovitz had to come back from her walk and make the bed and put all the dolls and pillows out, or no one had been sleeping in the bed at all that night.
Okay, and so based upon, all of the information then you had on that date as you were investigating, the information that you were getting was appearing to be somewhat inconsistent to some of the evidence that you were seeing at that time.
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, we have no further questions of this witness. However, we would move for the court to accept the photographs, which were identified as 1 through 7, 11 through 13, 15, 17, and 22. We are going to be requesting that those be visually published to the jury on our smart board that we have here in court. We would further move into evidence Exhibit 24, 25, 27, and 28. Is that 7?
Mr. D'Anzo, any opposition to that?
Not to the photographs. I would object to the officer's, I don't know if there was offered the officer's report. I believe that was used to refresh her memory, not necessarily be admitted into evidence.
Except because it was utilized in her testimony, we're asking for its admission.
What number is that?
26, I believe. Your Honor, just so I didn't misspeak, when I said the numbers of the photographs, it was number 17 through 22. I might have said 17 and 22.
You did, yeah.
17 through
So on the
22.
photographs that were mentioned by Ms. Lemkill, 1 through 7, 11, 12, 13, 15, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, and 22 are received into evidence. And then exhibit number 24, 25, 26, 27, or 26 is, that's one we have to talk about, but 24, 25, 27, 28. Do you have any objection to those, Mr. D'Angelo?
No objection, Your Honor.
Your Honor, we will withdraw number 26. It was utilized for purposes of refreshing a recollection.
All right, I will receive 24, 25, 26, and 28 into evidence, and then number 26 is withdrawn. Thank you. Are you done?
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
Mr. D'Angelo, do you have any cross-examination?
Your Honor, I thought the state wanted to publish the pictures. Did you want to do that first prior to cross?
You're right. Let's do the publication. Thank you for
Thank
reminding me
you.
of that. And you don't have any objection to that, Mr. D'Angelo, do you?
No objection, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you.
Your Honor, I think you still said that you were admitting 26, but it would be 27.
Okay, I'm admitting 24, 25, 27, and 28, and you are withdrawing 26.
Thank you, Your Honor, yes.
Thank you.
Okay. So, Your Honor, for purposes of publishing, just so we have it on the record, pre-COVID, we would have just published the actual photographs and had them passed to each juror. Because of COVID, it was deemed it would be more appropriate to publish them up on the board. So just for the edification of the jury, as they would have heard the witness testify, the first photograph that Mr. Saunders has on the board would be exhibit number 2. It's now changed to exhibit number 3. It's now exhibit 4, exhibit 5, exhibit 6, exhibit 7, exhibit 11, exhibit 12, exhibit 13, exhibit 15, exhibit 17, exhibit 18, exhibit 19, exhibit 20, exhibit 21, and exhibit 22. And for the record, that's the completion of the photographs on the smartboard.
Thank you.
We do not have any further questions.
Thank you. Mr. D'Angelo, do you have any cross then?
I do, Your Honor. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Ma'am, do you prefer to be called by Miss Bilgo, or do you still like officer? I just want to make sure I'm being
I am no longer a deputy, so it's Mrs. Bilgo is fine.
Mrs. Bilgo. Okay. Mrs. Bilgo, on the time that you were dispatched out there, you were called for a missing persons, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And did anybody relate to the caller, Mr. Prokopovitz, whether or not he should be out searching around while you're being dispatched at this time? You mentioned in your testimony about not wanting family members to find the body. Did you relate that to dispatch to have him not leave the house?
No.
Okay. And as you were driving to that area, were you looking around for any evidence, or were you just driving right to the residence?
No, in approaching a residence, I slid down, looked around my surroundings.
Okay. When you first approached and walked in to the residence, you just testified about looking on the ground and that type of thing. Do you see anything of evidential value on the ground, such as footprints or even something looking like it's been dragged?
No, and I Unless something was terribly obvious, no.
Okay. So unless it was blatantly obvious, it was more you were just walking up to get the information on a missing person.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You walk into the residence, and I know we went over the photo, so I'll kind of skip over that. But you walk in the residence and you start having a conversation with Jim, correct?
Yes.
And did you notice more than one vehicle out at the residence at that time, or just one vehicle?
I don't recall.
Okay. You later found out that Wesley Edges was in the house. Did
Yes.
you ask to see his vehicle at all?
No.
Okay. And when you were looking around the house, obviously you testified that you're trying to be as observant as possible. You're trying to take things in, but I think you said not look creepy. Is
Yes, sir.
that the best answer for it?
Absolutely.
Okay. So you're trying to look around to gather evidence. Part of your duties as being a police officer is to use all your senses, your sight, sounds, smells, anything, correct?
Yes, sir.
When you walked in, you said the burn barrel was kind of smoldering or smoking. Anything funky about the smell?
Not that I recall.
Okay. When you walked in the house, was there any odor or something that smelled different in the house?
No.
Did you smell cigarettes at all?
I don't recall.
Okay. Did you see any ashtrays or cigarettes laying around?
I didn't make note of it. I don't recall.
Okay. And when you spoke with Jim, you indicated that he was responding to your questions. Did you ever ask Jim if he's ever had interaction with police in the past?
No, I did not.
Okay. So you don't know whether or not this is the first time he's ever dealt with a police officer asking him questions?
Correct.
Okay. And so he's answering the questions as you're asking them, but he's not necessarily just giving you a narrative of what's going on, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And when you started talking to him, did you say, I'm going to ask you a few series of questions, or did you ask him just to tell him what happened? I guess I kind of want to get a distinction there.
Can you say your question again?
Sure, absolutely. When you first started talking to him, when you first started talking to Jim, did you say, I'm going to ask you a series of questions to try to get some information, or did you ask him just to tell you what happened?
No, I asked him what he called the sheriff's department. I asked him what had happened and why would he believe that his wife would be missing or endangered.
Okay. And that at that indication, he was concerned because his wife's been suicidal in the past. Did you get that information at first?
Yes, that's what he told me.
Okay. You mentioned talking about her going for walks, right? Did he show you the area that she walked around the house in?
When we walked out of the house later, he had kind of pointed or made mention to like that she walked around the house by the gardens and things.
Mm-hmm.
But then he had previously in the house told me that he felt that she liked to walk out towards the creek and just around the area along the roadways.
As we saw in those pictures, that the house is pretty small, but the area which the house sits on is fairly wide open, correct?
Yes.
And when he says that she liked to walk towards the creek, that's a fair distance from the home, true?
Significant, yes.
Okay. And so when she does these walks, did he indicate that she liked to walk in the early mornings, even before sunrise?
That is what he told me.
Okay. So it wouldn't be unusual that he went looking for her outside, looking for her to be walking before the sun came up, correct?
I asked him what made that day different because he indicated he normally would just get up and go, but sometimes when he would get up early, he gets up early and goes in for a very early shift. And he said that he told me that he wasn't startled by the fact that she was not in bed with him because he said that she did sometimes get up before him, so meaning before 4 a.m. to go out for walks. So if you're asking, so he was saying that yes, she would get up in the wee early mornings. He told me to go for walks.
So does that give you the impression that she's a bit of a night owl?
Yes, maybe that she had trouble sleeping or something because he indicated that she would go to bed after him, but still rise before him. So consistently, it didn't, if it was a consistent pattern, it wouldn't make sense. She wouldn't be getting very much sleep, but that's what he had told me.
Okay. Now, he talked about the medications, and you talked about the medications that she was taking because of her mental health issues, right?
Yes,
Did he show you the pill bottles?
yes.
Where were the pill bottles located?
I don't recall where he kept them.
Okay. Were they in the kitchen? Do you know if they were in the bedroom or in a bathroom?
I don't remember where he had them. He said that he kept them from her.
Okay. When you went to look at these pill bottles, were they under lock and key?
I don't remember if he went and got them for me. I don't remember where he got them from.
Okay. Did you count the number of meds that are in the pill bottles?
I believe I did.
You counted the number of pills to see if they were consistent with the time they would have been distributed to the time she would have
Yes, sir.
been missing?
Yes, sir.
But that wasn't in your report, correct?
No,
Okay. And did you note if any pills were gone?
no,
Okay. Did you know if whether or not she had access to non-prescription meds, such as over-the-counter meds?
no idea.
Did you ask him that question?
I don't recall.
Did you ever ask him whether or not she had access to Wesley's meds?
No, sir.
Okay. Did you check to see if Wesley had meds?
I walked with Wesley through the upstairs where he lived and resided, but I don't recall making any note of any medication.
Okay. Now, you noted in your testimony that Jim indicated that Victoria doesn't drive, and so her not going somewhere without her driver's license wouldn't be that uncommon if she doesn't drive, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And let's talk about the purse. You said
Actually, I'm sorry. If you're asking me if it would be uncommon for a woman to leave without her purse and her identifying things, that is uncommon.
okay.
So whether she's driving or not, and a woman takes her purse has her personal identification, her credit cards, her cash. So no, in that case, no, I do not think that that's.
If a woman went for a walk around her home or in that area, would it be common for her to take her purse around the home?
For that, no.
For that, no, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So going back to her purse, you said you did a cursory look into her purse. Did you notice, you mentioned a number of items in there, personal items, hairbrush, some makeup, perfume, that type of thing. Any cigarettes?
I don't believe I made note of any in my report.
Okay. No cigarettes on the kitchen table, no cigarettes in the purse, as far as you remember?
I don't recall anything else.
Okay. And were you aware that Victoria was a heavy smoker?
No.
Okay. Now, when you asked about weapons, did you locate where the weapons were located?
I asked him, I asked Jim, and I asked Wes, and they said that there was only one weapon in the house and that they had both secured it and that it was still where Wes kept it.
Okay. So was Wesley's weapon at that point, as far as you know?
I believe that's what he said, that it was Wes's.
Okay. And as far as, let me go back to the pills for 1 second. When you were looking around the house, did you notice like a pill box? You know, sometimes individuals who take multiple meds during the day, they have those little pill boxes, those plastic pill boxes that separates their meds at different times. Did you notice one of those?
No, sir.
Okay. And this is the first time you've had contact with the Prokopovitzes altogether, so you don't know about Victoria's habits, you don't really know about Jim's habits, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, you talked about looking at dealing with a missing person, you're looking for clothes and different things. The first thing you talked about was her shoes. When you went to the closet looking for your shoes, did you say there was one boot missing or a pair of boots missing? I thought I heard one. I just want to clarify.
Meaning a pair.
Meaning a pair of boots. Okay, so there's a pair of boots missing.
Yes, sir.
Did you find out whether or not she was wearing those boots that day?
No.
You don't know if she wore those to her appointment earlier?
To the doctor appointment that they
Yes.
went to?
Do you know if she wore those boots to the doctor's appointment?
No.
Okay. Did you look around the house to see if those boots were somewhere else other than where they're usually at?
I did not see them. We did not see them anywhere. As I was walking with Mr. Prokopovitz through the house, that was kind of my point, to find footwear or anything else that I could give a description of her, that she was last wearing this.
Okay. When he said that she was wearing a stacked heel, do you know if that was like a spiked heel, or are we talking about a girl's with, they had those boots that are a little bit more rubber and they're a little bit higher, but they're still pretty flat. Do you know what the boot looked like?
No, I've never seen the boot.
Okay. So when somebody tells you they're a pair of dress boots, you don't really have a great description. You may have one belief of what it looks like, but it could be something completely different.
I specifically asked him, what it looked like, and I remember asking him like how tall it was, and he was kind of indicated that it was fairly tall.
Okay.
And then I remember, was it like a stiletto heel? But he said it was like a big, taller, chunky, stacked heel.
Okay, so a chunkier kind of boot heel, not necessarily a
Like a dressy shoe. With a
like a
taller
dressier
heel.
boot, but not necessarily like we would consider heels, correct?
No, I understood it to be a dressy, higher heeled boot.
Okay. You also talked about this coat. Again, is that because it wasn't in its usual spot, or did they locate the coat somewhere else? Do you know?
Did who locate? Sorry.
When police did their search around the house, and I'm just talking about the day you were there, did anybody look to see if the coat was somewhere else in the house?
I walked through the house with Mr. Prokopovitz and the upstairs with Wes, and we did not locate the white coat that he said was missing from the closet anywhere else in the house.
Okay. When you're looking around the house, you mentioned that she had a lot of knickknacks. They had a lot of knickknacks in their house, and they were very meticulously placed.
Yes, sir.
Did you see anything out of place? Maybe I ask this question this way. Did you see any of the items that seemed like they were disturbed or that they weren't where they were supposed to be, like something that would be of evidentiary value?
Like things all knocked off a shelf or something and on the floor broken? No, sir.
Okay. And that was the upstairs as well as this basement where you're talking about the Christmas decoration. Everything was very meticulously put up. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary of evidentiary value.
Correct.
Okay. Did you see anything in the house that would lead you to believe that there was a occurred?
No, sir.
Now, going back to Jim saying he saw his wife when he was going to bed, there was discussion about the bed itself not being made. You got the impression that when the first time Jim told you about this was more that they slept in separate rooms. Could it be that he was sleeping in the recliner or on the couch?
He told me that Victoria was watching TV when he went to bed. That's
Okay.
what he told me.
Did he ever ask him whether or not he slept in his recliner a lot?
No.
Okay. So when somebody says they went to bed, could it just mean that he put on some clothes to go to bed and then he just went back to his recliner because Victoria usually sleeps in the bedroom?
Very well could be.
Okay. So it's not real clear, at least at that point, when he says I'm going to bed, it could have mean that she was watching TV and he just said, I fell back to sleep because she was watching TV. I went to bed.
He didn't say he fell back to sleep. He said he went to bed.
Okay. But you didn't inquire as to exactly what that meant, like where he was? You just assumed he went to the bedroom? You didn't ask him he went to the bedroom?
The man said he went to bed.
Okay. But that's what he said? correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then, did Jim ever say, because this is a small house, did he ever say he heard the TV turn off?
No.
Did Jim ever say he heard Wesley leave?
No.
Okay. So far as your report, in the conversation you had with Jim, you don't recall him ever saying he remembered a time where Wesley left the house and went to his friends?
No, I don't. My questions to Jim were when he last saw her, so a timeline for when she was last seen,
Okay.
possibly what she had been wearing. That was,
And at this point, you're treated as a missing person, even though you testified that there were some times where you just thought there was some odd answers, correct?
yes, I many times people will have like a domestic disturbance, whether, and they don't want to say that they had an argument or something. So sometimes we can tell that, you can tell people are admitting things when they're talking to you and they're not. You can tell when people are holding something back. But it's not that you don't know what they're holding back or why. So it's just a point of making note that I felt that he wasn't telling me all of it.
So that was more of like a gut instinct versus actual hard evidence.
Yes, but I get so yes and no. So when someone tells me they go to bed, but then the bed's made so intricately, it doesn't seem to be a thing that a man would do, would make the bed intricately. I'm sure there are many men that make their bed very intricately. But just like the shoes, going for a walk at 4 a.m. or before 4 a.m. with like a tall stacked heel, it did not seem reasonable to me, but it's not that someone might like to walk around in high-heeled boots all the time.
And since you don't know what those boots look like, you can't say that they were inappropriate to go for a walk if she liked them.
I asked Mr. Prokopovitz to describe them. He said they were higher. To me, they seemed, but that is my opinion of walking. Maybe she liked to walk in high heels.
When we talked about what he last saw her wearing, did he describe her clothing, what she was wearing?
No.
Did anybody describe her clothing, what she was wearing?
No.
So all we have is we know that she had a white jacket and these boots.
Those are the items that I could get him to help me look through, and they were the items that were missing, so they were assumed to be on her person.
Now, when you were asked a question about Jim's demeanor, that he was kind of calm, when you talked to Wes, was his demeanor also very calm?
Yes.
Okay. So their demeanors were pretty much similar.
Yes, and the reason I pointed out that it was calm is because it seemed odd. It seemed odd to me that only Mr. Prokopovitz would be downstairs giving me information, and it seemed odd that Wes would be upstairs and not downstairs telling me, we got to find my mom, something's wrong, where's my mom? It seemed odd to me that in the hour and a half that I'm there talking to Mr. Prokopovitz, that he doesn't say, well, come on, we got to find my wife.
But you also found it odd that Wes wouldn't come down and say, my mom's missing, and here's what I know. Yes,
so initially when I found out that he was upstairs, I postulated to myself, why is he upstairs? Is he afraid that he's going to come down, and does Mr. Prokopovitz not want him down? Are their stories not going to align? Is Wes staying up there for a reason? Is he trying to hide something from me?
And to the best of your knowledge, when you talked to Wes, did his story somewhat align with Jim's?
He said that Wes told me that he had last seen his mother at 6 p.m. the night before, and that his mother was in a good mood. And then I specifically was like, did she seem distraught or depressed? He said no.
And How long did you take a statement from either Jim or Wes, or did you just put it in your notes?
From what they told me? No,
Yes.
I just put it in my notes.
Okay.
So, again, I was, after being there for that time, I was past my time to be gone from work, so then they switched.
Did either Jim or Wes indicate that Vicky needed a cane to walk around when she was doing her walks around the house or outside?
No.
So you also talked about finding Vicky's phone and calling Stacy. That would be Stacy Deere, correct?
Yes, sir.
When you called Stacy, do you recall how she answered the phone?
No.
You remember if she said, "Hey, hi, stranger," or anything of that nature?
No, I don't recall.
Okay. When you talked to Stacy, there was something about, and maybe I misunderstood your testimony about the phones being off. Whose phones were off for a period of time that they didn't work? Was that Stacy's or was that Vicky and Jim's?
I believe it was Stacy's, but I don't.
You don't know for sure?
No, sir.
Okay. So the call that you looked at, that there was this call to Stacy on April 20th, you don't know exactly how long that call was or even if it made it to Stacy?
Correct.
Okay. And you don't know specifically the time that Stacy talked to her mom last?
I did not make note of it when I looked at it. I did not make note of when it was. I don't even recall if that phone had the capability of showing.
Now, approximately how long were you at the house?
Over an hour and a half.
Okay. And even though you had some gut questions, you still referred it as a missing persons case, correct?
Yes, sir.
There wasn't anything that led you to believe that there was foul play, at least at that point?
Correct.
Okay. That was a yes?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. And both Jim and, you mentioned that both Jim and Wes didn't seem that worried. That was something, did you ever ask if there was something that Vicky ever went missing before, when she went on these walks and they couldn't find her for a while?
No. Or did I ask if she ever went on them and they couldn't find her?
Right.
Before? Not in so many words like that, but over and over again, I asked the similar questions. You know, where did she go for walks? You know, what time would she go for walks? What would she wear? And the consistent theme was that she walked around the house, but he also indicated again that she would walk out towards the river.
And before you left, did you have conversations then with the other two officers that you called in to kind of give them a briefing of what you've learned?
Yes, sir.
Okay. While you were talking to Jim, I'm assuming that these other two officers were searching the outside of the property?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You mentioned that there's an officer who handles the canine and then an officer who's kind of doing the observing. So the officer with the canine is looking for the canine to react to something, correct?
Yes.
Did either officers indicate that the canine reacted or they found anything of evidentiary value around the house?
No, they did not.
Okay. And do you know if they searched all of the buildings around the house or just kind of a cursory search around the house?
I believe they did, that they explained that they had checked just the obvious large places where a person could have been, where she could have fallen or hung herself or something.
Do you know if they went all the way down to the river? Or the creek, I guess, is whatever it's called?
I believe I recall Mr. Cornelius saying that he went down there. Because I know that later, after, when I did walk out, that Sergeant Kurth asked me to go check the Mountain Bay Trail before I left. And that I had, Mr. Prokopovitz asked if he would want to go with me and kind of point out any place she might be, look for anything, a scarf or hat on the side of the road that might be hers.
And when you did that trip to the Mountain Bay Trail, did you find anything of value?
No, sir.
Okay. And Jim went with you, pointing out different spots that she might be, like have gone in the past.
He just rode in the back seat of my car. I believe at that time, I'd asked how they had met. And he had told me that they had met when he was driving truck and that she would stay up all night talking to him on the CB.
So they would talk overnight while he was driving overnight truck. So kind of her personality to stay up late, I guess it sounds like, right?
Yes.
To the best of your knowledge, did they find anything near the burn barrels of value?
Not that I know of.
You mentioned the basement and the first floor were kind of Jim. When you went up to, did you go up to Wes's area?
Yes,
where he was
sir.
living? Was Wes's area kept in the same meticulous style as the first two floors?
No, it was distinctly his.
Okay. So it wasn't as knick-knacky, it wasn't as well-placed, it was a little bit more like a grown man's just living there, right? He's not as clean as everybody, as the other parts of the house?
I wouldn't say grown man. There were a lot of wolf posters.
Okay. Do you recall how old Wesley was at that time? We met with him?
I wrote his date of birth down. I
Okay.
don't recall.
Somewhere in his 30s, maybe?
I believe so.
Okay. When you were observing Wesley's area, did you see anything out of the ordinary that raised any suspicion?
I took note and put in my report that he had that it was odd that he had I believe like a slab of wood that he had a significant amount of fixed blade knives that were displayed.
Okay. Did he say any of those blades were missing?
No. And I kind of just mentioned to him like, oh, you like wolves, and just tried talking to him about his personal area.
Okay. Did he give you any indication about his mom's health and how she was feeling that week?
So in the CAD notes, it was mentioned that Wes and Jim went looking for Victoria. So when I had Wes away from Jim, I asked, and Wes was the one that pointed out that he was not Jim's biological son and that Jim was his stepfather. So I remember I took note of that because the way he said it, he was just making it really clear that he wasn't related. And I believe, he told me that he had been at a friend's or something. I don't recall. I was just looking to see if anything was extremely out of the ordinary. And other than wolf posters and knives, Wes didn't there weren't any blood stains or anything, and there was no body in there. So
Sure. So Wes made it clear that he wasn't Jim's son, but Jim referred to Wes as his son. Is that how you understood it?
I believe so. Yes.
He didn't indicate this is my stepson, just he said, my son Wes is upstairs, kind of thing?
Just that Wes was upstairs, yes.
Okay. And the CAD notes indicate that he said he went searching with his son. Are we presuming that that's Wesley?
Yes.
Okay. You didn't say I went searching with my stepson.
No, it specifically had the name Wes in there, and I Without looking at the CAD notes again, I can't remember if the dispatchers indicated that you said son.
And when you filled out the missing persons form, as the state pointed out, these forms are pretty common because missing persons happen more than you would think.
Yes.
Okay. So this wasn't an uncommon call. You also made a mention that most times people are found. Is
Yes.
true? How often are they more found than not?
We take missing person complaints fairly often. Usually people are found.
Okay. So this is kind of an unusual case that the person hasn't been found.
To this point today,
Yes.
absolutely.
One quick question. With regards to the items that are missing, so there was a coat and some boots. This time of year, wearing a coat would be pretty typical, correct?
In April?
Yes. It's cold in April in Wisconsin, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So it wouldn't be uncommon if she went for a walk, she would have grabbed a coat.
Yes, sir.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Ms. Lemko, do you have any
I just have
redirect?
4.
Okay, because
So you were specifically asked by the defense if you saw a sign of struggle. Based on your training and experience, hypothetically, if somebody was strangled in a house and taken out of that house in a vehicle and dumped somewhere else, you wouldn't see struggle in the house, would you?
No, ma'am.
And hypothetically speaking, if somebody was drugged to the point of unconsciousness or death, thrown in a vehicle, taken off site, and their body dumped, you wouldn't see a sign of struggle, would you?
No.
You were also asked by the defense specifically about the difference in your interactions between Jim and Wes. Isn't it true that Wes came down and told you specifically he was very worried about his mom? You detailed that in your details.
Yes.
With respect to Jim, you just testified that he didn't even say, we need to go find my wife. He didn't tell you he was terribly worried about his wife, did he?
No.
So their interactions were different on that date.
Yes.
I have nothing further.
thank you. Mr. Danzel?
Just to follow up, ma'am, when you say on those hypotheticals, if somebody got strangled, there would still be some sort of signs if you're dragging a body, correct?
In like a house on the linoleum or something?
More or less, if you have to get the body out of the house, there would have to be some sort of signs of a body being dragged. Like I asked you before, was there any signs of any dragging across the driveway or anything near? And you said no, correct?
Not between my squad car and the doorway. There was nothing, no extreme gouge, but the ground, it was April, so the ground was still frozen, so I wouldn't expect to see anything. But
And-
in the residence, there wasn't anything. I just noted there was nothing, like all the trinkets were in their place.
And knowing that Victoria was around 60 and Jim was around 68, when somebody in hypothetical is getting strangled, it's not that easy to strangle somebody to kill them at that age, is correct?
I'd object to lack of foundation unless she's killed somebody. He just asked her how difficult it'd be to kill somebody.
Well,
She has been in law enforcement. She can answer the question, fine. If she can't, that's fine too. Go ahead.
Are you asking me how hard it would be to strangle a 60-year-old 100-pound woman with a colostomy bag kind of thing?
Essentially, is that been on your training experience, and I'm assuming you've seen all kinds of different scenarios. If somebody is 68 and the other person is 60, it can't be just that easy just to choke them out, correct?
In my experience with people, when they're having a domestic disturbance, if you're asking, and what people can do to each other, I don't find it, I do not find anything out of the realm of possibilities.
So it's a gamut. It's not necessarily it can or can't happen. It's just you don't really know, correct?
I don't really know if someone was strangled in that house. No, I don't know.
Okay, so you have no knowledge and there was no evidence that would lead you to believe that strangulation in this hypothetical could have occurred. You don't know.
I don't know.
Okay. And when you were asked about Wes's demeanor, he said he was worried about his mother, but did he show any emotion? Because you indicated that his demeanor was very similar to Jim's. So did he show emotion, or he just said, yeah, I'm worried that she's missing?
I only spoke to Wes for a little while when he ran upstairs. And I did not make note of his demeanor as much as I made note of Jim's. I talked to Jim significantly longer. So I don't have anything either way.
Okay. So Wes wasn't bawling or crying or showing a lot of emotion that you would have noted in your report had he done that, correct?
Yes.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. We are going to take our lunch break, and I do have to give you an admonishment. Jurors, I now caution you not to discuss this case with anyone, not even among yourselves, until this case is submitted to you for your final deliberations in jury room. And you are then to discuss it only among yourselves in the jury room. And with that, we will stand for the jury, please, and we will see you at about 1:20. Thank you. If you go with bailiff Tom. Thank you very much, and we'll see everybody at 1:20 then. Thank you.
Can I put one thing on the record, Your Honor?
Yes.
To wait for the door.
Oh, actually, why don't we come back at 1:15? You can do so then. Thank you.
Thank you.
She is.
Mr. DeAngelo?
Yes, Your Honor.
We'll put this on the record, Heather. The witness is excused. Thank you. You're free to go? Sure, thank you. Heather, I saw that